Welcome to another edition of Life's Journey. I'm Dr. Ralph Smith. For all those people who've been joining us and been involved for well over 6 years, we want to thank you. We especially want to thank the people here in Port Angeles, PAPA, which is Palencia Area Public Access. It's our home base, it's our birthplace of our media division, and we appreciate all their efforts and, of course, the support that we've received from our subscribers of WAVE here in the Port Angeles area. We'd also like to thank our second home away from home, and that's Thurston Community Media. They cover most of Thurston County, including our state capital. And Deb and the people are doing a great job out there, and they have both of our shows, Life's Journey and Positively Port Angeles, on a regular scheduled basis, for which we thank them for. Great people, great support base, and a very large subscriber base. We also want to thank the folks that are working so hard to get us established in Southwest Idaho and Eastern Oregon. That is the area that was the home base, the birthplace of Jenny Marie Wellness, a company that I head up, and we're looking forward to being there with over 100,000 subscribers. Now, all the other folks that have tuned in, and we see the hits on our access as far as our website's concerned, which is www.jennymwellness.com, and Jenny is spelled with a G. And we appreciate all the support of people who do go to our website and click Life's Journey and watch the programs. We're involved with court-ordered programs in Southwest Idaho, and I know that a lot of our clients access our website in order to further their recovery, for which we thank you for that. And all the other folks, we have a lot of people we've built up over these 6 years that watch the show and send me comments and everything like that, and I know that Sean Bennett runs this division for me, and at the end, you'll see on the closing billboard our website address and maybe even our phone number. Feel free to contact me. But this has been a labor of love, and now that that love is starting to blossom in helping people in their lives, that means a lot to me. And last of all, but certainly not last, is the wonderful job that Sherry Kidd has done in Positively Port Angeles. What she's been able to do to promote this area and this community could never be repaid. And I appreciate all her efforts and her continued support and, in a sense, her efforts on growing Positively Port Angeles. Now, we will be adding 2 new shows at a minimum, hopefully by the fall, and that'll be Legal Connection, where we'll bring local attorneys in and talk about legal issues, both civil and criminal. We'll be doing that. And of course, with our Seahawks ready to play their home games here pretty soon, we're going to have Northwest Sports Line. And that's a show that'll be covering the Seahawks. It'll also be covering the Seattle Mariners. And in between, might throw a little soccer and women's basketball too. So it's a total Northwest sports channel for us. And we'll be kicking the Sportsline show off and Legal Connection in the fall. And we look forward to your participation on that. So let's get back to what we have scheduled today. Episode 5 was an easy one for me to pick. I generally try to pick topics and areas and focus issues, as I refer to it in my practice, on things that affect people the most. And this particular issue that we're going to talk about in this segment is a very important one. And that's referred to as co-parenting. Now, some folks get married in the traditional way. Some people operate under partnerships. And other people, unfortunately, may have brief affairs, and we'll leave that alone. But in those type of relationships, it creates children. Now, the honorable thing to do, and I'm not judging people, but the honorable thing to do is for people to stay together, either in a partnership or a marriage, and raise the children together. So that once they get the age to go off into their trade, graduate from high school, or move on to college, that they have the support, the emotional and financial support of both partners who have created this God's blessing. But the reality is, it doesn't happen all the time. I've been blessed with a woman who I've been in partnership with for over 50 years. We've been married 48 years. So all 3 of our children were able to have that support. And then, of course, they've created the children. So I have 5 grandkids, too. And Linda and I are, of course, proud that we have, and we don't like to admit it in front of people, but we have 2 great-grandchildren. So the children, I believe, had a lot to do with the success they've been able to have. Not because Linda or I are exceptional parents. I think we're good parents. But they had that support they needed. They were able to spread their wings, and they not only created their families and their touch to society, as I refer to it, but they've gone on to great careers. And when you go on great careers, you make decent money. And when you make decent money, you don't have to worry about financial pressures, which is the number one breakup of relationships, are financial responsibility or financial disputes. So hopefully that's not affecting you. But what is sometimes forgotten in this whole process are the children. I have said this before, and I've been practicing over 32 years. I have yet to ever meet a child who has gone through a divorce or a separation partnership that hasn't been somewhat scarred. Some of the scars are minor scars perhaps, where it affects just their self-esteem or self-worth, which can be rebuilt by professionals. And others are scars that they carry into their relationships, and they tend to repeat the same mistakes. So the purpose of this program, it probably makes it one of the most important ones that you'll ever watch, is the issue of co-parenting. To the credit of the courts throughout Northwest, which includes Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, most family law judges and courts are requiring a co-parenting plan. Now, it's a great opportunity for lawyers to make a lot of extra money, but that's not the purpose of it, hopefully. But it gives a game plan, a plan that spells out for each partner what their responsibilities are. And this is especially true when you get into blended relationships or marriages where they have children of their own, and then the kids that they had with other partners get kind of left out. It's a huge problem in our society today. So I'm just going to give you some, hopefully, some nice, let's say, checklists to make sure that doesn't happen to you. So here we go. The most important thing that you have to remember is you put the children first. You know, I can remember when I first started out practicing as a doctor with these kids I'd work with, because I focused on child psychology, and they would say to me, Dr. Ralph, you know, we didn't ask to be born. So why are we having to have all these problems? And you know, it's true. I mean, they didn't get asked to be born. So some kids are born into a great environment. Others are involved in a very pressing environment, to say the least. And with our country in this current state that it's in, unfortunately, a lot of people are falling in the latter case. So what I'm going to suggest to you is to kind of use this as a checklist. Please take the time. This is definitely rated PG. So take the time for your kids to sit down and watch the show in whatever venue you pick, whether it's our website or YouTube or Apple TV or, gosh, we're on 8 different ones. But find us in Life Journeys and sit down with the kids and let them watch the show and let them ask questions. And hopefully you'll have this covered. The children should always be first. Those are God's blessing. And quite frankly, putting religion aside for a moment, it is your legacy. And when you start pushing 70, like yours truly, that legacy means everything. So let's talk about it. First of all, let's remember the divorce rate right now in the United States of America is now approaching 55%. 55% of all marriages are starting to end up, obviously, in divorce, which creates another whole host of problems. So it's something you might want to think about. So if you definitely put your kids first, you also need to think about putting your relationship right up there too, because a solid relationship is the foundation of raising children. Now, blended families, which is a case where partners come in and they have children from other partners, let's say, and then they decide to have children with themselves, as far as between themselves, whether it be through adoption or whether it be through natural reasons or ways, they fail at 75%. And I've always said in my previous show programs about couples relationships that don't introduce a new person in the family dynamic. Once again, the family dynamic, unless you know that person's a keeper. It just confuses the kids. And that's something that's really important to remember. So that's lesson 1. Lesson 2 is there's quite a legal process to go through when you try to establish a co-parenting plan. If the parents are working together, even if they're separating and going their own ways, if they can get a qualified professional psychologist or a psychiatrist involved, and they can work the plan out with them and the help of the professionals, they sign it and get it implemented, that's the best way to go. But if not, and you choose to make this part of the separation process or divorcing process, then you got to get lawyers involved, and they're not cheap, folks. $200 to $400 an hour. Then the courts get involved with approving your co-parenting plan. So I would suggest to you right now that if you have children involved and you're going to go through this separation process or divorcing process, that you make this your top priority, more important than dividing up assets and liabilities, more important than anything. And we'll cover a few of these points, and then I think it'll be helpful guidelines for you. First of all, custody. You'll have to wait for our Legal Connection show to get in all the legal ramifications of custody. But let's assume that in most cases, unless you've got a parent that's got issues with the law or substance abuse, you're going to have joint custody. Now, when you get into physical custody, that has a lot to do with those lawyers again, and I'll save that for our Legal Connection show. But that joint custody means you need to work together, especially if your children are in the young impressionable age groups, which is basically 4 to 10. Once they hit age 10 or 11, then they go into puberty, and boy, you're going to have fun with that until the day as they spread their wings and become adults at 18. So the issue of custody and being the disciplined parent or the non-disciplined parent, and perhaps what I recommend is rotating that responsibility, that needs to be clearly established. That's point one. Point two, medical expenses. In today's world, with all the different viruses and plagues running around, these kids need to be covered. And there's different programs in each state that I practice in, but it definitely applies within the country, where you can go ahead and make sure they have medical insurance. They need it for their own health. They need it for their own medical well-being. So make sure that the medical insurance issue, regardless of which partner is going to pay for it, or if you go with a state program, which they're available for young people, it doesn't matter how you do it. It matters that you do it. And these kids need to be protected for those medical expenses. It's absolutely critical. The other issue, which is very important, and we'll close with this one before we take our break, is holidays and vacations. A lot of people spend time in their co-parenting plan figuring out, well, you can have the kids on odd weekends or odd days and this and that, and they're running them all over the place. Horrible thing to do. So one of the places you can start at before you get in this alternate weekend thing is you can go ahead and say, look, these are the holidays, and obviously you have Easter, you have Labor Day, you have Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever, New Year's Day probably. So you want to go ahead and take those holidays, separate them out, and sit down with your significant other and say, okay, we don't want to run the kids around during holidays, so let's pick the holidays that you want and the time frames, and then I'll make a point, talking as one of the parents, that make sure the kid is there and that they're being supportive by each partner by, number one, not trashing each other in front of the children or with the children, and number two, being very supportive, saying, hey, it's really important that you spend time with mom, or it's really important that you spend time with dad. And although grandparents no longer have legal rights, it's also important to include the grandparents, because they, perhaps other than the children, are the greatest victim of that. So take the time to work those details out, and it's very simple. You take a piece of paper, you write the holidays down, you write your children down, and if you have multiple children, it's better for them to do it together as a group instead of trying to have them running all over the place, because that's where scarring gets involved. And split those holidays up so that you guys will make sure, as partnerships here, you guys will make sure that these children are exposed to both partners, that they're positively reinforced about both partners, and that those grandparents and those uncles and aunts and cousins, all these people maintain their relationship and identity with your kids, because that is their foundation. And the broader base you have with the love and blessings that brings, the easier it will be for your kids to survive this process called divorce. And I always try to tell people that when they decide to make babies, or they have babies by accident, and that happens too, that's an 18-year commitment. And if you're not fully prepared to do that, or things come up that can't be fulfilled, the very least you can do is do it with your children and have a good co-parenting plan. Well, let's take a brief break, and I'm sure you've written all these things down, and if not, of course, you can revisit us on our website, which I just gave to you. But let's consider that your homework assignment, and when we return, we'll take section 2 of what it takes to create a good co-parenting plan. I'm Dr. Ralph Smith, and you're watching Life's Journeys. Welcome back to Life's Journey. I hope you enjoyed that brief break. And if I know Sean well enough, you probably have been exposed to what we call paradise. You know, we're so blessed to live in Port Angeles, and I know in the beginning of each show you get to see some of the sights, but to be in such a wonderful community and to be right across the strait from my favorite city, which is Victoria, Canada, although lately we haven't been able to go over there because these governments can't figure out what they want to do. But I can't wait for the big boat, MV Coho, to start sailing again. And I guarantee you old Dr. Ralph will be the first in line. But we enjoy that culture and things that beautiful area, Victoria, Canada, British Columbia, bring to us. And we're blessed with having the ocean, and we're blessed by having the mountains. And what I consider one of the most beautiful lakes in the United States, Lake Crescent. If you don't believe me, watch the Positively Port Angeles show with Sherry Kidd, and she'll show it for real, what is so much beauty out there. But anyway, back to the subject at hand. One area that a lot of partners end up creating problems regarding the kids and co-parenting is the issue of child support, spousal support. Each state has a different determination on how they term that. And folks, it bothers me a great deal when people use that as a power trip or as a club involving the children. The children do not need to be involved with child support issues. The children do not need to be involved with the amount of child support that is being paid or not paid. Their issue is to have a good, safe home to live in where they can stay either cool or warm, where you put good food in their bellies and they can grow and develop as adults. That's ultimately our goal and our legacy, as I shared with you earlier. Some folks who are receiving the child support make the horrible mistake of thinking, well, if they didn't get child support, I'm not going to let so-and-so come and visit the kids. Absolutely deplorable. Because the reality is that's a separate issue. And if you violate a custody order on the basis of visitation, which hopefully you've hammered out with the guidance of this show, do not intertwine those efforts about spousal support. If you have issues of getting spousal support, you should go to the state, and the state can go ahead and withdraw those funds automatically so that it's deposited in your account. Or if some of those deadheads, whether it be male or female, decide to keep changing jobs so they can't catch up with them, then that's deplorable. But the way to handle it is you get a lawyer or you file a petition with the courts. Now, I can only speak for the 3 states that I practice in. I can't speak for the whole country, and I know we have viewers from all over the country and throughout the world, in fact, with the YouTube connection. But in these states, and I'm going to give you a generalization here, and I feel more like a lawyer than a doctor today, but the generalization is if the spouse who does not pay the child support, they can lose the privileges of having a driver's license, the privileges of having a hunting and fishing license, a privilege of having a professional license that is issued by the state. The state can make this very difficult on that individual. And as you all know, it's literally impossible to function without a driver's license. So when these folks, who I'll call the deplorable ones, remarry, and you see that resentment of their new partner saying, well, I don't know why we have to pay money for those kids. I wasn't involved then. It doesn't matter. Put your children first. So if you have an issue of child support or spousal support, or whatever term is used, that needs to be handled legally and between the 2 partners in the privacy of a room or something where the kids don't need to hear. Because if the people or the kids hear that squabbling going on, they're going to feel threatened by that. They're going to be afraid that maybe they're going to get kicked out of the house because rent's not being paid or the mortgage is not being paid. They're going to be afraid of participating in school activities for fear the money won't be there to buy the things they need. They have these fears already of self-doubt because this relationship went the wrong direction. Don't feed it further with issues of spousal support. So I would strongly suggest, if you can afford it, is get an attorney that specializes in family law to help you with these kind of issues. Public defenders are not available for this issue because this is a civil issue. This is not a criminal issue. So you need to do that. Now, if you don't have the funds to get an attorney to help you these things, there's a Legal Aid Foundation. There's all kind of organizations around where lawyers do pro bono work, which means free work, to help people with challenges and they don't have the ability to pay. I do a lot of pro bono work as a clinical psychologist, and I do that as a way to give something back to society. So the reality is, if you really want to be involved and you really want to take care of this spousal issue support, which I know each and every one of you probably need, do it with the people that are involved in the process, not the children. It is hard to deal with the fact that a relationship fails. You know, we can point fingers and say, well, this person's at fault, that person's at fault, there's substance addiction issues involved, there's financial issues involved. The excuses are many. There's no doubt about that. But the reality is, who do we shield from this? We shield the children. Now, you might think, well, by doing this, this is going to create financial hardships for me. It's going to create problems with my new relationship. You know, wah. Whine somewhere else, folks, because you're not going to find a sympathetic shoulder on my part. I do a lot of the things I do for the children. And believe me, I'm very proud of the fact how Linda and I were able to work together. And the benefit of that is not just the 3 kids and going through in their life and their careers and their successes and the nice, beautiful homes and nice cars and all those material things. That's cool. I don't mind, being happy about that. But more importantly, it sets the tone, it sets the foundation for our grandkids, who they need their fresh start. And then when those grandkids start having babies, and boy, I'm aging myself now, and you end up with those great-grandchildren, that's important. The evolution of taking care of children never stops. In fact, when I've done some parenting shows and seminars, the point I always make is from 0 to 18 or 17, whatever, is that you have advise and consent. When the child gets emancipated or they get over 18, then all you can do is advise, and you only advise if they ask your advice. And you need to be careful you're not offended if they don't take your advice. And if the truth be known, and the kids, when they get out of puberty and go on to adulthood, they'll probably admit it to you privately. They were going to do it anyway because you raised them. You set the value systems in. You set the responsibilities in. You hopefully gave them the tools to pick a good partner that can last them throughout life. But as I shared with you at the beginning of the show, obviously 55% of the marriages and 75% of the blended marriages, which we used to call rebound, we're not really encouraged to use that term anymore, but they fail. So if you go by the basis of percentages, one thing it should teach you is that you want the relationship to work. So you don't have to deal with co-parenting plans. You don't have to deal with psychologists. You don't have to deal with children welfare agents or whatever they call it in your state. You don't have to deal with psychiatrists. It's been shown in many studies that turmoil like this can lead your children into substance addiction. Because a lot of kids, when they're very young, it's not that they choose to go into addiction. They want to be reinforced that they're good people. And believe me, there's a lot of people out there who either through a financial gain or a personal gain would less like the fact that they can take your kids and bring them under their wings. And in my opinion, in most cases, ruin their lives. So these problems that I just mentioned are not scare tactics. These problems are a direct relationship on how you handle your relationship and the birthing of these children. And if it doesn't work and you gave it your best effort, then come up with a program of co-parenting so that it benefits the children and so that each partner of the relationship knows exactly what their responsibilities are. So that is something that's really important. So please take the information I'm giving you and share it and make use of it. And if you have a relative, a brother, a sister, or maybe even a mom and a dad that are going through these separation processes, be there to give the proper enforcement. The issue that is most important is to develop, whether it be a co-parenting plan or whatever the case may be, is to develop a family plan, a personal plan. I know in the business world we always have our business plans so that each person in the business knows what they're expected to do. Each person in the business knows what type of profitability in the process you go through and what's required to make it a successful business. Wasn't it fair to say that it is also important to go ahead and do that in your own personal life. Because when you really think about it, and especially lately, and I know these programs are aired over and over again, so I won't date the show, but in the era of where people work at home, in a way that's a benefit, because should be able to get closer to your children, but in a way, some people might think that's a hindrance. Not everybody can afford to hire a nanny. So in this time that you have when you're working at home, draw closer to the kids, make sure they get to school. Businesses and companies understand that, and they need to go ahead and work together with you so that children are not impacted by all the pressures and problems that society brings. It is your legacy. It is your future. Take it serious. My final thought in discussing this with you today in Life's Journey and talking about co-parenting plan, a lot of this work and discussion and sharing each other's love should be done at the beginning of the relationship. That's why there's premarital counseling. That's why people need to marry each other, because of the love they have for the person. Not the lust, not the physical attraction, not the intimacy, but the solid core fact that if you decide as a couple to have children, that you each understand and discuss to the max what responsibilities are involved and who's going to take care of those responsibilities. And that you, no matter what happens, that the kids are taken care of. I haven't even addressed the issue because we don't have enough time in this segment, but I haven't even addressed the issue of survivorship. What if you lose a partner? It's not that unusual. With the health ailments that's around, with COVID, with all these different things that are happening, these kids who are now being affected by this horrible disease have also been affected by losing their mom, their dad, their grandparents, their uncles, their aunts. And I'm sure it puts great fear in these kids. And it's a shame we can't shield them from that. But unfortunately, that is a reality that we all face. But you also, when you do this pre-planning, whether you do it in premarital sessions before you decide to go forward in your relationship, or however you approach this, you'll have a plan. If, God forbid, you were to lose your spousal partner, and that void was not filled right away because you don't want to get involved in a rebuild type of relationship or a rebound relationship, it's critical to have these discussions about co-parenting. And yes, 90% of the time, co-parenting plans are used when the relationship separates. No doubt about that. But how about the relationship that if you lose your partner through, God forbid, some death or horrible disease or whatever the case might be? I think COVID has opened people's eyes, not only in the responsibility of getting the shots and living a safe lifestyle and using those masks, it's beyond that. It's taught them the fact that no one is guaranteed a long life. And I'll close with this statement, and it's a fact. The average life expectancy 5 years ago in the United States of America, and this is an average of everybody, all economic brackets and everything, was that a woman would live 78 years and a man would live 74 years. And a lot of the reasons why that ratio has been tainted in favor of women living longer is those were actually before the days that women went out in the workforce and really became a force, per se, in spousal and financial support. But put that aside, each of those classifications in the last survey that came out in the year 2020 has been reduced by 3 to 4 years. And yes, a lot of that has to do with COVID and the other associated viruses. But it really kind of opens your eyes to realize that we're not going to be here forever. That the time we spend on earth is rather short. So make good use of it. Think about the fact that when you move on in whatever religion you have, and you want to leave a legacy of seeing your children, once you're gone, continue to grow and do the right thing. And they'll pass that on to their children. And then you know what's neat about that, folks? That means you succeeded in one of life's most important goals. On behalf of the Life Journeys, as far as the show's concerned, a lot of people in Jenny Marie Wellness are involved with this show and preparation of it. I want to thank each and every one of them, all of our viewers, and I want to also thank Sean because he's the driving force that keeps this media division alive and well. God bless you. Take good care of yourself and your family and be well. And don't forget our last episode of Season 3. and that's talking the finding the path to happiness. Take care of one another. God bless.